Hi, hello, welcome to Man with a Mentor. I am the man, your host, Matthew Barnard. And in case you're wondering what a show called Man with a Mentor may be about, it's basically about me finding interesting people. And I've wondered, hey, how did they get to this successful place where they are in their life? And we have a great guest here today, and his name is Rob Kutner. Hi, Rob.
Hey, great to be here, Matthew.
All right, I'm going to read something about you that will sound very impressive to everyone. All right, Rob Kutner is an Emmy-winning writer for TV, comedy, and animation for shows including The Daily Show, Conan, Teen Titans Go, and the new hit show God's Gang, and is the author of kids' graphic novel Snot Goblins and Other Tasteless Tales, and The Jews, 5,000 Years and Counting, and Ant-Man and Deadpool books for Marvel. And all his info can be found at robkutner.com.
That was a good read. I almost believed it for a second.
Oh, no. Let's start with your latest project of God's Gang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because it's such an interesting and educational and fun concept. Like, how did all those elements come together for you?
Should I give people the thumbnail of it?
Yeah, tell me everything.
What it is? Don't say educational because we're going to drive people away. It's a kid's show. But basically, it's I didn't invent it, but I'm the head writer for it. It is an independently produced animated show for kids that brings together 4 superheroes from different faith traditions, so Christian, Hindu, Jewish, and Muslim, who are action heroes who know different kinds of martial arts, and they go around the world fighting bad guys together, and they're best friends. So it's an action comedy with a positive vibe to it, and it's not about preaching religion or telling anyone to be religious. It's about people cooperating across their differences.
Right. I mean, that's what I loved about it, is it seems like people have a broad knowledge of their own religion, but they don't see those icons or have an understanding of the rest of what is out there in the world. So I think it's bridging those gaps in a unique way. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, it's not trying to exactly to educate people, but sometimes what happens is things, differences come up between the members, not like conflicts, but just like, there's different kinds of prayers they do. And sometimes we have a mini episode about how they have different dietary habits and things like that. But mostly it's about just like having kind of how, we're all really the same. Like, even if we're religious or not, how we all like strive for the same values, the same good. And we should all kind of work together in that stuff instead of fighting over something like that. It has a lot of positivity, but also it's been like, we're trying to make it like super fun and entertainment. So I was hired to be the comedy, to be the writer for it. So it would have a lot of comedy and the characters would be really larger than life. And then they have like professional fight choreographers in there getting like all the action stuff, like the fights looking really cool and stuff like too. And then, just bringing some imagination to it. So, the idea is like, if you try to lecture people, especially kids, like cooperate with your neighbors, differences don't matter. They're just going to tune you out. But if you give them a good show, they have fun watching a show, they can absorb that message on their own.
Right. I'm wondering how you got this gig, and I'm wondering how much involved you are with the pitching of the storylines and the beats of the stories. Is it like a team effort, or do you come up with an entire episode on your own and do it? And do you send it in for like approval and there's changes, or how does it work?
Yeah, well, so it all originates with this guy named Nimrod May, who is he's an entrepreneur who's based in Israel, and he worked at Disney for a number of years, and then he went off and like invested in a lot of tech startups, and he's made a lot of money there. And he had kind of a spiritual awakening, and he was like, he wanted to sort of unite the world with peace and harmony, and he thought a kid's show would be the way to do it. So he and I have a mutual, and when I left the Conan show in 2018, I was looking for new things to do. And he had sort of developed all this idea and the characters, but didn't have a writer engaged. So our mutual introduced me because I was looking for a new thing to do. And I just thought it was a great idea to begin with. I'd never seen anything like this, and I just thought it was so important, but also like really interesting as a kids animated show. And the way it works is because it's his vision and his creation, like the very first episode, they already sort of had the idea for it, he and his other members of his team, and I just turned it into a storyline. And then after that, I've been really part of the creative conversation. So the last episode and then this one that we're working on another one now, I pitched the idea, and then we have a long conversation about how that will play out as a storyline. One thing we're doing now is like doing it in 4-part episodes, which is better, works better online than because it's not a TV show with like a regular time slot or whatever. We break it into 4-parters, so like how those stories would work out. And Nimrod looks at it and gives notes on it. We have a director or someone else who also gives story notes and that sort of thing. And we finally reach something we can agree on, and then I go off and execute it. And then usually there's script notes as well. And again, like the creator, Nimrod, is just very involved in it, but he doesn't like tell me what to do exactly. Like he likes working with me and trusts my instincts, and then just like, hey, I wanted to see this kind of thing mentioned, or I wanted to see the character more like this. He'll have pretty small notes about things like that. Or just big ideas about like, I want a story about this thing. And he leaves a lot of the writing and the storytelling to me.
Let's go back to when you were just a youngin'. And when did it feel like something inside you said, I want to be a writer, I want to be a creative person? And what did that look like? And what was that time like in your life?
Well, interestingly enough, I wasn't really that young. It was actually pretty much later in my life, like almost at the end of college. Oh. So I will say that I've always been like a person who tries to make people laugh, and I've always liked to be creative, and I've always done writing and that stuff for fun. Done that throughout my youth to the point where I was making jokes so often I was annoying my classmates and my teachers. But I was pretty serious in other ways, like it was kind of involved with politics and social justice causes and stuff. And so I went to college and I majored in some pretty serious subjects. And then, but I also realized that one day I sort of looked around and realized that all the activities I was doing, extracurricular activities, were comedy related. Like I was on the improv troupe. I was writing for the musical theater group. I was the editor of the humor magazine. So it's like everything I was doing outside of class was comedy related. And I think just something hit me one day where I was like, oh, I think this is what I really want to be doing. I just hadn't really thought about it professionally. But from then on, I became convinced that that was the path I should seek.
Don't you think that if you tell people you work more on the comedic, creative side, that they expect a funny person or like a person to be that person at all times, but it's not really a realistic representation of what a person can be 24/7.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
what?
saying?
So like
it's a burden I think a lot of comedians make to be entertaining.
Yes. Yeah, you dance, monkey, dance, right?
Right.
No, so it's funny you say that because like when I wrote my most recent TV job was I worked for Conan, and I wrote monologue jokes for him. So like for that, and I was there for 9 years, writing probably an average of like 30 to 50 jokes a day. And then, but then if someone says, hey, tell me a joke, I just freeze up. Like it's not really I could probably think of one, but it's not like I'm a person who has jokes at the ready. And then if they're even like, what was your favorite joke? I couldn't answer that either because there's been so many. Like I have this skill set that works more in terms of writing than joke telling, but also, you're sort of in a mindset when you're on the job, right? You're in the mindset, you're looking at the news, you're listening to other people's jokes, you're at your desk, it's very familiar, you have like a work routine, but like the rest of the time, I do tell jokes, but they're kind of like, in a conversation, I'll make a quip about something someone said organically, but like I don't sort of produce sort of like entertainment out of nowhere on command for free.
I did want to expound on writing for late night TV because I did talk to our mutual friend Stephen Levinson. And I
Yeah.
didn't know when I talked to him that when you first get hired on for late night TV, it can be like a 1 month gig, a 2 month gig, and they're constantly kind of reevaluating you. How many jokes did you get in last week? Are you contributing? Like, is that stressful? Is that a constant nagging doubt in your mind? Like, I'm not going to make it. And how do you know that you are making it? Like, are they kind of coming to you and saying, like, we love your jokes more than these other 6, or like, and they're kind of probably going to disappear? Or how does it work? How do you know in the room what's going on?
You're my favorite kid. Well, first of all, it is actually, it is 13. It's a 13-week commitment contract, which is the sort of standard. So it's a bit more than a month, but it can be that. Second of all, different shows have different environments around that. Stephen happened to work on one that was very brutal in that way. It had a lot of turnover. I know of some other shows that are like that too. I've been blessed that the shows that I've worked on weren't quite putting the screws to you as much. They weren't sort of pushing you as much. And maybe they were just sort of tougher about who they hired in the first place because they wanted to see what you were like before they did it. But I would say that there was internal pressure for sure. Like, I was always putting that pressure on myself. First I worked on The Daily Show, and then it was Conan, and you're always like, how much did I get in the show? Like, every day you're like questioning yourself. Oh, I didn't get enough on. Oh, I didn't get enough on. I got nothing on today. Are they going to fire me? Are they going to realize that I'm an imposter? You've heard of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, you do have that for a while. And then after a while, I think you sort of get more comfortable with it because you realize, like, well, they've kept me around this long. And then in my case, like, this is the second or third job I've gotten. So I must be doing something right. So I would say that the pressure continues to mount on yourself, but it doesn't really like kill you. It doesn't crush you after a while. But some of those, that depends on the shows I worked on. Like the one Steven worked on was pretty brutal about that stuff, and they did fire people. So there weren't that many firings at the shows that I worked on. So I was a little bit more fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, I wanted to talk, actually. I was going to bring up imposter syndrome. Do you think no matter the level that you get to in the entertainment industry, do you feel like that always crops up in the little dusty corner of your mind? Like they keep hiring me, like, are you surprised? Are you like, no, I've achieved this and I'm good? Or do you sometimes like wonder, like, am I good?
I would say that over time, what's happened in my experience is it's transmuted from like imposter to inadequate syndrome. So in other words, like, I don't feel like the jobs I've had, I think, like, because I got them and stayed at them so long, I knew how to do those jobs. What I was thinking in the larger context of the entertainment industry and writing was that I'm inadequate because I'm sort of like just a guy who can write late night. I have a British friend, and the term they would use for what I do over there, he uses when he talks to me, is gag writer, which just sounds very vaudeville. Like, hey, you want a gag? So it kind of just had like a sort of a more of a blunt quality to it. That's what I feel like. But what I'm saying is, like, I've tried to sort of get into writing sitcoms or selling a show or a movie. And I've had sort of some progress, but I haven't quite like nailed any of those. And I see a lot of peers who have, and I feel like, oh, I'm kind of inadequate because I'm not a quote unquote real writer because I haven't ever worked on a sitcom or gotten on a sitcom or gotten one in the air and stuff like that, which I know those are high bars, but you just sort of feel like you feel okay about where you are, but then you start to feel like where you are is limited. Like, I feel limits sometimes, if that makes sense. Do you think for writers, at least from the perception of like the studio people, the executives, they do sort of look at you as kind of only one sort of thing, only be able to write sort of thing. So yeah, I do feel like that gag writer thing maybe is sort of hanging over my head when I go into like pitch a half-hour show or a movie, to the extent that when I have tried to go in and sell some, and I've come pretty close, I usually partner up with someone who has worked on those shows and has been a showrunner or an executive producer on one of those shows, because then it's like, you've got the person in the room who knows how to do this kind of show, done it, and you got me with the ideas and the comedy, and that's a good team. But on my own, they wouldn't say, hey, we're going to turn over tens of millions of dollars to this guy to create a sitcom, because even though writing is writing on some level, he hasn't done this, and he also hasn't produced this thing for us, and we're putting a lot of our money at risk. So I sort of understand the calculation, but also there's a tendency to kind of like put people into boxes, I think. Even though plenty of writers do switch around and do those things, I think from the side of the people who buy and make and produce those things, they don't necessarily see it unless you have to really prove it to them in a big way.
When you decided to write the book, like The Jews, 5,000 Years and Counting, and that sounds more novel-like, or not comedy, not, superheroes or whichever. Did anyone say like, well, where's your degree in literature or composition or whatever? So how did you break through and say like, no, I can do that. I can do that too. And it's going to be a funny book and I know funny. Like, how did you convince somebody that you could actually write like a printed book?
A long book. Well, geez, Matthew, now you're trying to give me imposter syndrome.
Oh, no.
No, it's fine. It's a fair question because it is a big leap. So first of all, I think that there's a difference between what I was saying about like the way TV silos people off or movies and the different kinds of those. I think there's less of a stigma about people writing a book, but also like that book is not actually my first full-length book. It's my fifth, I think. So I do think editors tend to be more open-minded about that kind of thing, especially because sometimes they can exert a heavier hand, like they can guide you in the process. In my case, I'd written a humor book called Apocalypse How, which is sort of a tongue-in-cheek guide to surviving the apocalypse with like a really optimistic slant about how it's going to be great for everybody. So I had written that a few years ago. And then a kid's graphic novel, which you mentioned, so that's the writing sample. And by the time by the time both the Ant-Man book and the Jews book are full-length books, basically what happens is like they're kind of just doing more of a vibe check to see like if you're the kind of person who has like I interviewed for both of those and I had ideas and a creative voice that I could demonstrate in sort of a kind of a Zoom call enough, and then I would present a lot of ideas about like, well, here's the chapters I would focus on. I would get their approval on them. So there's like, instead of just me going off and writing it all by myself, it's like me checking in and getting feedback a lot more often is what I'm saying. With both books, I would do drafts of things and they would say, no, not really, this isn't the right way, do it this way instead, or like even start over sometimes. So I guess the answer is that they're a bit more hands-on basically in the editorial process in books. That being said, I think also like they took a leap of faith that I had been writing for late night shows, which is having to write a lot on deadlines, like lots and lots of materials, that I could produce stuff in a relatively timely fashion. And I think also, again, I had to prove myself, like once they saw that I was turning in full chapters, that I was doing my homework, that I was revising things the way they wanted, the confidence grew, and then they were sort of mostly get out of the way and let me do it my way. But, you have to kind of prove yourself again.
You've also been a teacher and a lecturer.
Yeah.
And in order to be a comedy writer, do you think you go to school for that? Like, do you think going to school and having a related degree to that goal as a life goal of being a comedy writer, do you think it helps? Do you think you don't need it? Do you think you just need to get in a room and pay your dues and not bother with those 4 years? Or do you think it helps to have a background in like entertainment and then go into what's your take on a comedy writer and the kind of education that they need or they should not need?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So I am, in fact, still a teacher. I teach comedy writing at a film school here in LA. And I'm also a complete hypocrite because I advise people not to go to film school. I didn't do it myself. I think there is some value in it in that you can make connections. You do have access to resources if you're going to produce things, student projects or whatever in the school. And in a very few cases, there might be a way in which the school sort of a connection or a networking thing gets you to a first gig or some kind of opportunity. But they're also very expensive. And I think that you get more value out of kind of learning on the job. But what I mean is not that you get a job, but like you go out and figure this out yourself. So like I spent years and years hustling and trying all kinds of things before I got my first break. And I think that forces you to go out and meet a lot of people, which you have to figure out how to do yourself to network to have a sustainable career. So let's say that even your film school job gets you that first job. You may only know a few people you went to school with, and they may not be working, or they may not stay in the industry. You have to go and network a lot to get your first job if you do it yourself. And that way you meet a lot of people, and then you kind of have a tentacle everywhere, and you have like more awareness. And then I think also you have to just try a lot of stuff. You have to like figure out how to do the craft, what you're good at, what you're not good at, go outside your comfort zone, take classes, make little films, or write things or act and direct things yourself with just peers for fun. Like you really have to kind of learn, I think. When I say on the job, I mean like you have to learn by trying it out. And I think that's the best education. And then also, I think that the best education for your brain to be a creative is a broad one, not a professional. I mean, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, then you should go to med school or law school. But after your undergraduate degree, I think that if you take a lot of classes in different subjects and just expose yourself to a wide body of knowledge, you will have a more interesting, creative brain that will give you more ideas for characters and stories. I even recommend when people ask me for advice, we are on Man with a Mentor, so I'm going to mentor you here a little bit, but right. I often recommend that the kids who are coming out of school with whether they're in an entertainment focused program or not, I'm like, don't just jump in, like go off and work for a year in a regular job, or do volunteering, or if you have the opportunity to travel, live somewhere abroad that you need and do something there. Like just like really like soak up the real world, because like ultimately if you're creative, you want to create things that reflect the real world that people live in, and not, there's so many projects that come out that are like, and inside, look at Hollywood. And I'm like, oh, finally, great. And I like some of them. Some of them are really well done, but I also don't think the world needs another one of those. And you're also like competing with a lot of people who have that same narrow focus. So I think that the more things that you read and learn about, the more interesting and fertile a creative space you're creating for yourself, again, for a sustainable career.
I'm wondering if you could touch on maybe that one intangible quality that you think might be the most important to make it as not even just a comedy writer, just like any kind of person who wants to be in the creative writing scene for entertainment. Like, what do you think is a crucial component to someone's psyche?
Honestly, it has to be like persistence or determination, which sounds like, every motivational speaker, but this business particularly, you don't get any encouragement. Like there's milestones in a lot of other careers. If you're a doctor, you get your med degree, you get your residency, your internship, your placement, et cetera, or internships in other fields, that sort of stuff. In this one, no one tells you, hey, you're doing pretty good, keep it up. In fact, people ignore you, they reject you. You got 1,000 other people trying to do it. It's a volatile landscape, like shows and movies and stuff come and go. You don't know how people get jobs. They're not advertised. Like I said, trying a lot of things, like I was saying earlier, you have to basically almost have the mentality that I can't do anything else. I really can't. And I do kind of still have that mentality. Can't imagine. I could do a lot of other jobs, I think, but I can't imagine it. If you can't imagine that space for yourself, then you have to and you probably have to persist longer than you thought you would. Anyone who's jumping into this has to have this dose of chutzpah or almost blind faith that I'm gonna make this work, even though the odds are so daunting. So you come out full of fire and full of piss and vinegar, and ready to take the town by storm with all these ideas, all this energy, and talent, and you have all those things, but nobody's buying it yet. You have to persist. You have to keep at it and keep trying different things, probably beyond the point that you think that you deserve to be discovered, until basically your abilities meet up with an opportunity that comes your way, sort of right place at the right time. Right networking development, right project comes along, your sample is the right thing for what the market needs. All those things have to line up. For me, it was about a 5-year process before I even got a job as an assistant on the Dennis Miller show, Dennis Miller Live, which was my first job, my first writing job for The Daily Show. And that was when basically tried all kinds of things, nothing paid off. And then suddenly a couple of things kind of lined up at the same time. And then I got a shot at it, as an assistant. I got to submit material to kind of audition to be a writer. And I finally got that after 3 more years. So, but all those things were after all kinds of things didn't work out. So that persistence like has to be like nuclear powered, really, I think, for you to sort of stick around.
Let's talk about social media. I love your site, robkutner.com. It's fun. Do you think people put too much stock into how many followers they have? Do you enjoy social media, or do you just kind of put yourself out there, or do you use it as a calling card for yourself? How do you?
I suck at it, honestly. Like, I don't get it. Like, I'm doing okay on like, I got like, I think almost 30,000 followers on Twitter at one point over a few years. And I have like, now I'm on Blue Sky and I have like about 15 or something like that. But sometimes that's just like catchy lightning in a bottle. Most of the time I put stuff out there, it doesn't get much of a response or not enough of a response. I do know that like a lot of times the industry is evaluating newcomers by looking at their platforms, by looking at how many followers they do. I think that's not a great idea, but it does happen, so I won't deny it. I don't know if that metric has ever been applied to me. They don't really tell you. I kind of came in on the old legacy model before social media, so I got onto these shows, and so that was how I proved myself. But I kind of view it as basically a sort of fun add-on. I do use it to promote things like my books and other projects or new videos and stuff I make. I don't know how much traction it gets. I put projects out there with a lot of social media support from me and from others, and they haven't really sold. And then sometimes you'll make a half-assed post and tons of people like it. You don't know why. So I feel like it's kind of a crazy game that I really don't understand. I don't feel like I'm very good at, but I think it can be useful when you're sort of starting out and establishing yourself. If nobody knows who you are, then that can be a great way to establish. I was fortunate enough that I was working for people who were already themselves well established, and then I could sort of, latch myself onto them. But if I was starting out, I do think there's a value to it. And it's also, I will say, like, an interesting thing that's not quite your question is, it has been a way of sort of making connections that I would have been able to make. So like, there is a bit of a more egalitarian culture, I think, in certain parts of social media where you can basically kind of message people who are way more famous or successful than you, and sometimes you'll get a response. And so like, I've gotten some famous people to work on projects of mine because they followed me on Twitter, or I DM'd them and they actually were interested in what I was doing, and then we worked some stuff out. And so I would say like, it does have that kind of interesting opportunity structure as well.
All right. Thank you, Rob Kutner. I'm going to send everyone to robkutner.com so they can learn about everything you're doing in your comedy writing career and all that, so they can find out more information. I want to thank you for being here and telling us about your life in Hollywood and how to be successful in what you do.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a really great talk, and I think really illuminating questions. I appreciated everything you asked me.
Oh, thanks, Rob. And thank you for listening or watching to another episode of Man with a Mentor. Bye.